So the idea is when you start to die, what happens is there are chemicals released in the brain, certain neurotransmitters. Initially, I thought it was glutamate, but I'm now concluding it's endogenous, that is internally generated dimethyltryptamine. And I think it's excreted by the pineal gland. I think the pineal gland synthesizes from melatonin something myself and my associates call metatonin, which is this substance that is, as Rick Strassman, the guy that wrote the famous book, DMT, the Spirit Molecule, he's a professor at the University of New Mexico. He argued that DMT is our reality modulator. That's what our reality, that's what it's attuned in some way. So I argue that as we start to die, these chemicals are released in the brain. What do? They act non-locally. So they instantaneously cover the whole brain. And they bring about a falling out of time. They bring about a sensation that time is dilating. And again, I do the physics of how time can dilate using Einstein and Minkowski and various other people. So time dilates. Now you have report after report in near-death experiences. Well, it's one of the Moody traits, and it's one of the Grayson traits. It's something called
Raymond Moody, Bruce Grayson, yeah.
And what it is effectively that time dilates in a near-death experience. It's one of the things people talk about. You know, time slows down, as it does in car crashes and everything. But people, particularly people who have a sudden death, mountain climbers, Heim, who was, I think he was Einstein's mathematics teacher, was a mountaineer. And he collected stories of people who had survived falling off the Alps. And all of them tell about time dilation. So this is chemicals released in the brain. But why does the brain do that? Well, then I use the next part of the Moody traits, the panoramic life review, where people turn around and say, my life passed before my eyes. If you put the time dilation bit to the panoramic life review bit, and I think I'm the only writer that's done this, has said, right, put the two together, what do you get? You get a panoramic life review that happens in the right amount of time, subjective to you. So in which case, in a real death experience, your panoramic life review doesn't happen in an instant. It doesn't flash in front of your eyes. It's a literal minute by minute life that you live, minute by minute. And you get catapulted back to the moment of your birth and you live your life again. And at the end of that life, in an even smaller piece of time, external public time is even smaller, but in your subjective time is still another lifetime. And another one, and another one. It's Groundhog Day, but it's a life. The Russian version of my book was called Groundhog Life, a chronicle of personal immortality. So you're in smaller bits of time, but this is the Bardo state. So you're in the Bardo state, but unlike the Bardo state, which says in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Evans-Wentz translation turns around and says, you know, that you see all these monstrous things and they're all terrible and they're all frightening, but they're all created by your subconscious. I argue it's more subtle than that. You live your life again within these states. And the information field that generates these reliving of your lives again are all different because they're all created holographically. They're all created from information. They're all created from the data field that holds the information of everything. And again, I do the physics of this. One of the last papers that Stephen Hawking wrote was with a guy called Thomas Hertog of CERN. And they came down with something they call the top-down hypothesis of quantum mechanics. And effectively what they argue is that from the moments of the Big Bang, every outcome of every subatomic action has a potential to exist. And the wave function is collapsed to follow that particular path. But all the paths are in potentiality and can be collapsed. This is Stephen Hawking, not Anthony Peake, not the guy down the pub. This is Stephen Hawking. There is then something called the transactional interpretation of quantum mechanics by a guy called John Cramer. And Cramer argues that there are two types of waves. There are advanced waves and retarded waves. And effectively, advanced waves are waves of energy or wave functions that are going forward in time, like we do. But there are also wave functions going backwards in time. So there are things there's information going in the other direction. And I argue in my book that the present moment is literally the interaction of those two wave functions that are interacting and causing a hologram. Because, of course, that's what holograms are. You know, they're just light wave functions causing an interference pattern. So that means that the future in potentiality is all there, and the past in potentiality is all there. So as you move through this, every decision you make then collapses for you. So when you're in this dying state, you can live your life again, but like Connors does in Groundhog Day, he makes decisions that are different every day. He follows every path that he possibly can do. And I believe this is what we do in the final moments of life. We live a myriad of lives. We fulfill all our potentials. We follow all the patterns we can possibly do. And we learn. Each life, we learn more, like Connors does. We learn to be more human. We learn to be more advanced, to become a Buddha, in effect. Life after life after life as we do this. And we become more perfect. And then at the end of a myriad of lives, you then die. And then you move on to whatever it may be, reincarnation, whatever your belief system fulfills, maybe. So the argument here is that part of you, the part of you that survives life to life to life is your Daemon. Your Eidolon dies. Your Eidolon is like an on-screen sprite in a computer game. It just exists for one game and it dies. But the Daemon goes back to the start of the game with all the knowledge it had from the previous game and helps you go through this life. It's the voice in the head that warns you. It's the voice that says, this person is dangerous for you. Don't go near them. It's the voice in the head that says, don't go out today. Don't get on that plane because it's going to crash. And the communication channels depend, how they're open depends upon what I call your position on the Huxleyan spectrum, how open your doors of perception are. And I wrote a book on this called Opening the Doors of Perception to do the neurological aspects of how the communication channels work. And I argue that people who have temporal lobe epilepsy, people that have migraine, classic migraine, people who have autism, people who have got Alzheimer's, the channels of communication are more open with the Daemon, which means the Daemon can more manifest in their lives.
And you might also include mystics and yogis and
correct.
Yeah,
that's what they do. The mystics and yogis train themselves,
right?
Because of course,
without having to have epilepsy, so they can
correct. They can just do it. And of course, this is the thing, isn't it? What is all the mystical traditions are all to find the God within, to find your higher self, to commune with your higher self. This is what I'm saying. Your God within, your higher self is your Daemon. It is you.